Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Arsaholics podcast on a Sunday night. And apologies for the delay. We did say that we were kicking off this live episode at 9:30, and it's 9:40, and that's all my fault because, as usual, there is something wrong with my system, and it's usually my mic just being a dickhead, to be honest. And that's basically what it was
Bit
today.
harsh on your mic.
Well, it's true though, isn't it? I mean, we spent ages just trying to diagnose absolute nonsense and doesn't say it's on mute anywhere else apart from one random place on the system where apparently it says it's on mute. So there you go, mate. There you go. Well, we won the battle. And as you probably heard his voice, Aaron is here with me. Hello, mate.
Good evening. How are you?
Yeah, I mean, that aside, I am good. I'm good. I'm looking forward to talking to you about all things that happened this weekend because it was the opening weekend of the Premier League, and Arsenal opened up with a win against Forest on Saturday, early kickoff, and yeah, we are joint top of the Premier League. So that's awesome. You know,
It is. Yeah,
it's
we are back on top. Well, I guess we started on match day 0. We start off top, right? Or is it Bournemouth still? I never work out if it's us or Bournemouth that start on top due to alphabetical order.
it's them. It is them who start. You're
AFC.
Right, but you know, yeah.
Screw
But
them.
like, forget that. I mean, screw them. Exactly. Who knows how long they're going to be in the Premier League anyway? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
They are a candidate to go down, aren't they? But where we can only hope. Anyway, it was an interesting game with lots to talk about, mate. So today, guys, on today's episode, we'll do that. We're just gonna cover everything about the game on Saturday, which we were privileged enough to be there for. Although that was looking unlikely for some of us at some point, which we will get into that with the big gating fiasco. And then we'll just talk a little bit about the rest of the games over the weekend, and anything that we might have learned, anything interesting, and we will also look to Crystal Palace. Our next game is Crystal Palace away. We'll look towards that. So yeah, I mean, already I can see the comments are really vibrant already. So I mean, Sean in the comments, hello mate, how are you doing? Shani, thank you. Shani, thank you for that. He's actually saying, evening all, I'll get this early. Don't forget to drop a like. Doesn't cost a thing, you freeloaders. Listen, he said it, not me. But he's right. Like, subscribe, share the podcast. Really appreciate it. And Shani talking about Mikel channeling his inner Pep this weekend, think changing personnel tactics to suit the opponent will be a regular theme this season. Yeah, I mean, let's all get into that in a second, because that's a good point. Aaron, and tell me, why was there a chance that you weren't going to be able to get in the stadium? Why was it that you were held back so disgracefully by the servers or whatever kind of bug there was in the in the digital ticketing system? Tell me what happened.
Yeah, so that was fun. So kickoff was at 12:30 in the UK on a Saturday morning. I remember we arranged to meet, and I think I was running a bit late. So you guys got there, I think about 11:45, and you breezed in. I think Mai said it's the quickest he's ever been in. Got into the ground, like through the crowds and through the turnstiles. I got there at about 12, and it was on the busy side, right? So I was like, okay, it's a new ticket system. They're only using digital phone tickets now, and there's no more membership season ticket cards. This will calm down, and it will go through and it'll work. But then I realized very quickly that the queues weren't moving. And then eventually I found out through some guy in the queue behind me who basically told me that, the whole system's just completely down and no one is getting into the stadium. And I thought, well, this is a bit of a problem because there's a game kicking off in about 20 minutes. So yeah, I mean, look, apparently the ticket system went down. They then delayed kickoff by half an hour, and then eventually they got everyone back in. Apparently, they had to reboot the whole thing, but actually, when I got to the turnstiles, what they were doing is just manually checking my ticket. A steward was just like, he looked at it for all of about half a second, he probably saw the Arsenal logo on it and was like, okay, go in. And there's a disabled gate. He just waved me straight in, which from a security point of view, probably wasn't the safest, but look, it worked. I now need to figure out if I'm still going to get my home credit for this game because I didn't scan it anywhere. But that gate was wide. There were at least 50 or 60 people going through that gate. So I'm not the only one. I did see on Twitter that this happened in a few different gates. So yeah, it was fun. And, it was a bit of a weird vibe because the weather was, when we got there, it was chucking it down with rain. Then it was beautiful sunshine and there's cloud. So yeah, I think it contributed to the atmosphere just being a bit. I think everyone was just a bit confused, and it's one of those where you kind of just hope it is a one-off because they've changed the tickets, and I don't want to go into debate of how you get tickets. We're very lucky as season ticket holders that we don't have to deal with the box office now. But yeah, it's a bit of a mess, and I hope it is a one-off because if it isn't a one-off, then the club do need to look at putting some of that transfer money aside to actually let people into the ground on time, because that's probably quite important. And Chan says, club was so unprepared. It was embarrassing. Turnstile issues, North Bank roof leaking all game. The beer cutter blockman ran out of cups for beer at halftime. I didn't know that. But yeah, the
So
North
Chan
Bank
was
roof.
drinking so much.
Yeah. Yeah, the North Bank roof is very much leaky. So I got leaked on. From
Sounds
the
kinky.
Emirates gods on my seat. I'm sure a few people in North Bank did, but yeah, it's all part of the fun, And look, as long as we win, which we did, I can forgive the club for all of that nonsense. So
Agreed.
So here we are.
Agreed. And look, at the end of the day, like, whatever it was, given it was an early kickoff, it wasn't like it was an 8 o'clock kickoff delayed to then 8:30, and everyone's getting home at the crack of dawn. So at least, given the game was delayed by half an hour, no one missed it. It was worse things have happened. But anyway, hopefully they sort it out, because obviously if they are going to persist with the digital ticketing, they're going to have to make sure this doesn't happen again. Otherwise, it'll be a real faff. I'm sure the broadcasters weren't happy at all, right? But as you say, all that really matters is that we won the game. Let's talk about that, mate. So the lineup was interesting, wasn't it? Because we've been talking on all our preseasons episodes, we've been saying about how this season it's probably going to be very hard to predict what lineup Arteta puts out there. We're going to have lots of change, lots of rotation, lots of tactical flexibility. And I mean, he did it from the word go, didn't it? I mean, like, I don't think anyone called that lineup. So we lined up with Ramsdale in goal, Jurriën Timber, Saliba, and Ben White, and then it was a really weird Gabriel sort of not being around, which that was, I guess, the big shock. But then the rest of the lineup essentially had Havertz, Partey, Rice, Martinelli, Odegaard, Saka, and Eddie. So it was not a lineup when the lineup was announced, and when we saw it, it wasn't something that everyone could obviously piece together. Did it look like Thomas Partey was going to play right back? Did it look like we were just having a kind of back three? What were your feelings when you saw the team sheet, Aaron?
Yeah, like you said, I was prepared for some rotation, let's call it, because we do need to rotate. And I think we will continue to rotate. But what I didn't expect was basically the bloke who is pretty much played every single minute when fit for Arsenal in Gabriel, not making it into the lineup. I think I could have drawn out about 15 different combinations of what we would have done. Gabriel would have been in every single starting lineup.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it was a surprise. But then you look at kind of what we tried to do and how Forest set up. I think it was pretty clever, and I think the more I look at it, when I watch the highlights back, it was we thought it was a back four with Partey at right back, and sometimes it was that, but what it actually was more of a back three with Partey pushing up into midfield, Ben White kind of playing on the right side, Saliba playing in the middle, and then Timber playing on the left. And then the beauty of that is you've basically got two really versatile defenders on each side of that defense who can, in Timber and Ben White, who can kind of just go all over the place in that back third. And then it allowed Partey to step up. It allowed Rice to push up a bit more, and really allowed us to try and deal with Forest's kind of low block. And, for the first 30, 40 minutes, I think it worked really well. And I think overall, I don't think we probably created as many chances as we would have liked. But actually, a lot of that I felt was quite circumstantial because we, within 35, 40 minutes, we're 2-0 up. And I think the half chances that we got, we took really well. And then you kind of had the Timber injury, and I think things changed in the second half where we weren't as good. But I really, really liked the idea that we could try something so drastically new that no one would have predicted it. And the good thing is there's no way Forest would have predicted that.
Yeah.
And that's the exciting thing for me is, as long as we can maintain the level and we can keep the familiarity of the system and the positions and, where people stand and how players run, I think surprised a lot of people going forward this season because we have so many versatile players.
Yeah, and you almost have to analyze the game half by half, don't you? Because that first half, like you said, we sprung the tactical surprise and almost executed it to perfection in some ways. I mean, you can still argue that we weren't at our kind of attacking, free flowing best, but whatever whatever it was that we thought we were going to go out there and do, Forest, like you say, were totally clueless. They had this one chance, which was it kind of came out of nowhere. It was a defensive error from our side. The kind of it was like an unexpected header that went over the back of our defense, and they were 1-on-1 with the keeper. But they were so shocked at that they completely, I can't remember who it was that missed the chance, but he completely fluffed a really easy chance because it was just so out of nowhere. Because other than that, it was like, to me, it was like watching two teams from maybe two divisions apart. It was just a team of fantastic footballers who had a plan and just suffocated the life out the other one. Forest, it just felt couldn't do anything. And it's really interesting because, you talked about that flexibility in defense with Timber and White being so comfortable in various areas. But it's also facilitated by the fact that Saliba was just back to his all action hero best, wasn't he? He was like just godlike in some ways. I just remember watching him and it was quite literally at times like, doing the job of two people, but he made it look so easy. He was just gliding everywhere, intercepting, heading, but not really breaking a sweat, spreading play. Loved it. He just looked like it was never panicked. It was just amazing. And it was just a half where you felt if you were Nottingham Forest, you thought it was going to be a really long day, didn't you? I mean, before we get to the goals, was there anything that stood out for you? Any kind of players wise? Did you just think anyone looked really comfortable in that system?
I was really impressed generally I thought Thomas Partey was, again, really comfortable doing something that we haven't really seen him do a lot, which is kind of, yes, be the kind of deepest lying midfielder, but then occasionally slot into that kind of right-sided, the right back role at times. And he, I think, contributed a lot to that flexibility of system because without Partey and then without Rice, that system doesn't really work. I mean, you could say that about most of the players. You could say that without Saliba, you probably can't leave him alone sometimes, just having to deal with any last defender. But I really like Partey in that role. I really like Saliba, like you said, was very, very good. I thought Havertz defensively had a good game. I think he worked hard. Going forward, I don't think he's there yet. But look, I think there are frustrations with, how certain aspects of the game went, and we can come to that. But actually, you look at it, is what we had last season was a starting 11 where we knew how they'll play. We knew who the starting 11 was when everyone was fit, and they knew each other really well, right? What we had yesterday was actually 3 players who were playing for the club for the first time in the league, 3 new signings, and then Eddie Nketiah as well. So that's 4 players who don't normally play for us, coming into the starting 11 and just having to figure each other out. So an element of unfamiliarity is expected. And actually, given that was an unfamiliar team of players to a certain extent, playing in an unfamiliar system, to play the way we did in that first 30, 40 minutes, I think was really, really good. And yet, yes, it's Forest, right? And against better opposition, we might do something different. But no, I was really, really encouraged by how comfortable they looked in a very new system.
Yeah, talk to me about Eddie then. He was, we talked for ages about who's going to step up into Gabriel Jesus' shoes against City in the Community Shield. We sort of went Havertz up top. So there was kind of thoughts that would he do that again? But if he didn't, would it be Eddie? Would it be Trossard? And he went with Eddie. What did you think of Eddie's performance?
Yeah, I thought he was pretty good. I've never been Eddie's biggest fan, right? But I think the longer he stays here, the more I respect his work ethic and his mentality, right? Where that he is this guy that probably knows deep down that he's never going to be the number one striker at this club, right? He's never going to start. If we got to an FA Cup final, he knows that he is behind Gabriel Jesus. He's probably, you'd argue, behind Leo Trossard as well as a kind of second choice for that.
Would you say that? But if he was, then surely Trossard would have started.
No, you're right. I think before this season we would have said he was almost third choice, right? But what he's done is he's just been like, look, I don't really care that I'm not first choice or second choice. I'm just gonna when I get my chance, I'm just gonna try and do my best. And a lot of the times he's taken his chances and he's done well. Yes, there's been games where he's kind of gone missing last season, but he's still young. He's still a young Arsenal Academy player. And for that, I am willing to give him, a few more chances, a little bit more time to just see where he can get to. I'm not confident that he will. I think raw talent-wise, he's probably a bit further down in the squad, but I think his mentality is actually like really elite in the sense that when you are a striker, at Arsenal, you're not going to play every game, but you're not going to get a chance to get 7 or 8 games to get your, to find your feet. And he's got to just come in and take his chances. And he took his goal really well. I think, again, he faded towards the second half and maybe he's not fully fit yet. But Arteta did actually say, I don't know if you saw Arteta's post-match conference, but he did say basically he was... he basically said that how Eddie was disappointed that he didn't start in the Community Shield. And I think he basically said he trained so well that he didn't need to tell me to play. I think Arteta used the words, if you don't pick me, you are blind. And then he kind of just said, like, he doesn't ask to play. He doesn't fight. He doesn't say, why am I not playing? He just trains really hard, and that's why I have to play him. It almost felt like he was having a subtle dig at Balogun with that comment.
Right. That's interesting. Very interesting. Yeah.
Where he was kind of just saying, look, Eddie's playing because he's training really hard and is doing his best, and I respect that. That's why I'm giving him... he felt like he had to start. Whereas, look, we don't know what's going on with Balogun behind the scenes, but something isn't right there, and I suspect... more than talent, there's a mentality, attitude discussion to be had about kind of who starts between those two.
Yeah, and rightly or wrongly, that is one of the clear non-negotiables we've come to understand from the Arteta era, right? If you are not on the exact page he needs you to be, character-wise, personality-wise, vibe-wise, you're out the door. And he's been so ruthless, rightly or wrongly, but in fairness, you know what? We're doing very well, and it's hard to sort of really criticize it, to be honest. But it's a curious case for Eddie, is it? Because we talked, I think, the season before last. Do you remember the season before last? He was coming off the bench and he wasn't doing anything, and then he kind of gave an interview and he sort of complained about the fact that he's being asked to come off the bench and you can't really show anything when you're off the bench. And well, I remember at least myself at the time sort of being quite critical of him and thinking that, well, isn't that how football works? When, especially when you're a striker, if you're not first choice, you come off the bench when first choice isn't doing so well or whatever, and then you score, and then that's kind of how it works. Then you get your chance. But the curious case is it's quite compelling for him, the stats, isn't it? Because I think it sort of suggests that when he starts, he more often than not scores. Like his scoring record when he starts is really, really good. I think it's like even better than Gabriel Jesus's is. But when he comes off the bench, I think there's something like in his last 21 games off the bench, he hasn't scored.
Yeah. I was going to say, as a sub, he's proven to be pretty ineffective. I mean,
ineffective, yeah, totally.
I think a lot of it is circumstantial in the sense that when we are calling on Eddie off the bench, it's usually because we need a goal and we haven't been playing that well. And, he is a striker that absolutely relies on good service and needing to be in the box, being alive in the box. He is not always going to be a striker that if you're struggling to get into the box, he's not going to make something happen, deep inside our own half in that sense, right? And that's what Gabriel Jesus does so well, is actually he's not a box striker. He's kind of everywhere, an everywhere player. But I thought actually Havertz did a lot of that pretty well yesterday in terms of the defensive work, tracking back. Martinelli, I thought, was again very good defensively and going forward. There were some moments where he was just incredible. But yeah, Eddie is a player who I think maybe he'll surprise a few people, including me this season, with just his ability to there are going to be games like this is going to be a long season, and actually, even if Gabriel Jesus was fit, if this Nottingham Forest game came, let's say after a Champions League game, right, and we're playing Forest at home, there's no reason why you can't start Eddie instead of Gabriel Jesus, because the level of opposition is a bit lower, and actually you want players to get minutes in games like this. So I wouldn't be surprised if after a Champions League game, I don't know, we're playing Burnley or Bournemouth at home or something like that, even if Gabriel Jesus is available, even if Trossard is available, just play Eddie and see how he does, because he's, yes, he's not good enough to, at least now, to start as our first choice, but he's certainly good enough to do well against Forest or against Burnley in a kind of hopefully run-of-the-mill league game.
Yeah, I agree. I almost think that he's better when you're playing teams that aren't going to deep block against you. Arguably, when we play teams like Forest and you're at home, they are going to deep block. And I found that Eddie doesn't find it that easy in games like this quite often. And partly it's because we don't create that much in games like this. And he does require, I think, a lot of good service. But I kind of feel like if we go away, for example, I think he'll do quite well away at Palace. Because Palace aren't going to, sit back against us. So they're not going to do that at home. And so I think that might be quite good for him. I agree with you. I think he could surprise a few. Can we talk about Havertz a little bit? Because he's probably the one that, and I imagine, he's going to be a divisive figure generally. He's been a divisive figure when, we signed him through preseason. He's been divisive. He's been divisive after this game as well. Yeah. And in this game, it was an interesting one where if you look at the stats and if you go in social media, it's really torn. Like you get these people kind of going, look, he's had a brilliant kind of off the ball performance. He did loads of good things. He kind of won loads of duels. He did basically what he was asked to do, aside from actually provide much end product, which many people would kind of turn around and say, well, isn't that the main thing? I personally did feel like if there was one player who seemed to be playing without a bit of confidence, then it was him. That's what it felt like. There was a few times where I thought he could have just done something with a bit more conviction. A couple of times where he looked like he was sort of through. But I still overall thought it was a decent performance. And I think the other thing that's very difficult is we almost judge players on where we think that the manager has asked them to play or told them to do. We sort of say, oh, is he playing as a central midfielder or as a striker? And then basing our judgment on kind of a predisposition on what we think that role should fulfill. But in reality, we know that Arteta may have had very, very specific instructions for him. And therefore times where we're like, well, why is he there? It's probably actually because Arteta has told him to be there. But anyway, that's sort of my take on him. Well, what was yours?
Yeah, I think I'd agree. He's a player that is tactically, I think, very good in the sense that I reckon Arteta feels that he can coach him to play a certain way, and Havertz will do that. And that's why I thought positionally, I thought he was very good. Defensively, I thought he was very good. But like you said, Raj, I think you call it confidence. I think he's not when he gets the ball, he's kind of just afraid to show like what kind of player he is. And maybe that's confidence. Maybe it's just I'm in a new team. I'm just gonna play this by the book rather than run this game by myself. Because actually, what you want is, you want players who are coached well, who follow the system. But when the time comes, especially for those attacking players, you want them to show who they are, right? You want them to show their character. That's what Odegaard does so well. Is that yes, tactically he'll track back, he'll go across, he'll go left, he'll go right, but then he has the ability to do something special and play a wonderful pass, or do a Cruyff turn to find himself in space. And I think Havertz doesn't yet have that, hasn't yet shown that, right? And I think he just needs to settle down, play a constant position where he kind of learns the system a bit more. And look, this is still early days. This is his first league game for us. And then I think we will start to see the brilliant attacking side of Kai Havertz, because I think so far he's kind of just been a well coached, almost like a very like a Granit Xhaka equivalent, like in the sense that he's doing what he needs to do, but not much more. But there is so much potential, and I don't think we've even like seen the tip of the iceberg with him, because I think there's a lot there, and yeah, he needs to do more. Again, the hard part is like when you see him in person, as we did on Saturday, he doesn't, his demeanor, the way he walks, the way he carries himself is just not. It doesn't look good. Right?
It's part of that just because he's really tall.
Yeah, he's quite tall, but then he's not like super built, so he's a bit lanky in that sense. And then he's, he just sometimes just looks down. I don't know, and maybe it's his face. Maybe he's just got one of those faces that isn't like a tough, energetic footballer. But yeah, I think you've just got to not look at his body language. Kai Havertz is a player that you just don't look. Again, the comparison has been made so many times to Mesut Ozil, right? Where actually Ozil could be like, "Hey, I'm just really happy. I'm having a really good game," and then the commentator would just say, "Like, look at his body language. He looks upset. He looks down. He looks rejected." And I think Havertz is probably quite misunderstood in that sense.
Yeah,
maybe there is an element of it. I don't know. Like maybe we're just giving him too much, like too much kind of like giving him the benefit of the doubt a bit too easily. Maybe he does need to improve his body language and he does need to work harder. I don't know, but my worry is there that when we aren't playing well, that stuff doesn't translate well into the crowd. And you saw it a few times. I think I heard a few comments where he had that chance where he could have been through on goal and he didn't really deal with the defender that well. A few people were getting quite annoyed because he looks quite dejected. I'm actually like someone who wasn't very over the moon with Havertz when we signed him. I'm actually pretty pleased with what he's been doing so far. But let's see. I want to see more going forward from him.
Agree. There's been a couple of comments just about Eddie, so I'll just read them out. Russ saying Nketiah is a fox in the box. I think Arteta feels a striker who needs to hold the ball up and play others in. Eddie offers goals, but little else, which I don't think Arteta is keen on. I think is a really good point, Russ. And Salman in the comments, thank you, Salman, for commenting. He says too much disrespect to Eddie. He's actually better in the box compared to Jesus. This is people say this quite frequently about Eddie is this great box striker, and many people do say he's arguably better than Jesus. I think it is a problem, right? At this level, you've got to be more than that. I mean, Jesus is a 4-time Premier League champion. He's arguably the best pressing forward in the world. I mean, that's certainly what Pep thinks. That's what Brazil coaches have said in the past. He is a truly elite player. He's still criminally underrated in my book, Gabriel Jesus. And I think Jesus is a good player for Eddie to be around to just understand that that's what the level is. It's not just about, technically how good you are finishing in the box. It's about everything else. It's about moments. It's about how you navigate periods in the game. And I think, Eddie has a lot to learn. But agree. He is a good box striker. Aaron, let's go on to Bukayo Saka briefly, because the second goal that we scored, it was sort of out of nowhere, I suppose. We had a corner. The corner was ended up being a little bit scrappy. It then kind of came out why Saliba did a great job at recovering the ball wide. Then he basically ends up laying it off to Saka, who manages to open up his body, and it looked great from where we were sitting. It looks even better when you see it on TV. Just absolutely nails an unstoppable finish into the top corner. Matt Turner, who's probably faced that shot 1,000 times in Arsenal training, still has no way of stopping that. It's unstoppable. How good was that goal? And do you feel relieved that we've just got Saka back and running as he, as kind of we've seen he can do last season?
Yeah, it was a phenomenal goal. We've seen it before. And he's just becoming one of those players that, the classic comparison is Arjen Robben, right? Where you know what Arjen Robben's going to do, right? You know exactly what he's going to do. Every defender in the world, when they face Arjen Robben, knows exactly what he's going to do. Yeah, every time he just manages to do it, which is come inside and shoot. And the beauty is, I think Saka, again, I saw him post-match. I watched a post-match interview on BT where he kind of just said, look, he really struggled to get into that space because the defenders were going 2-on-1 on him, and he struggled to do anything. But actually, that moment where Saliba did actually just give him a great pass, and he managed to lay it off into a bit of space, and then just bang, finish was insane. He's trying to do that more. And the beauty is, actually, if defenders think he can do that, he can, and he's just as good going the other way, going on the outside, and then coming inside and running past you and squaring it across the box as well. He's such a complete player that I think, he's just I don't know. There's words that, we've said everything that can be said. He's honestly, in my opinion, one of the best people in that position right now that I've seen. I can't think of many. I think Rio Ferdinand said it's kind of between him and Salah for the best in the world in that position, which is ridiculous to think that from our academy we've essentially got, if you think, how much is Salah worth in today's money? If he was a 21-year-old Salah, would probably be worth a lot of money. And this kid has come through our academy and is just doing it for Arsenal. He's signed a new contract. Long may this kid just continue to just get better and better and better.
Yeah, man. And that's when it comes to this elite level and winning these big trophies, it's about kind of players like that maximizing their potential in those big moments. You know what I mean? And there's not many players, I think, that can do it. And even in our team, I think we're a really, really, really talented team. But there's not that many players that you think can single-handedly do something that will change the course of a game, and he's one of them. So long may it continue. Like you say, the goal was brilliant, absolutely awesome. So, mate, we go in 2-0. It's a really dominating, every stat effectively says it's complete domination. I think at half time it was something like 80%, 81% possession, which is ridiculous, man. That's just unfair. But the second half was just weird, wasn't it? Because I recall there being many instances in the second half where it still looked okay. It still looked good. We were still generating some stuff. Declan Rice had a couple of chances, I remember. But we didn't really. There was some kind of edge that was lacking even before they pulled one back. What do you think that was? I mean, was that your take on it? Did you think it was just an edge thing?
It was very flat. It felt like we didn't really get out of first gear in that sense. I don't think actually Forest for large parts of it, almost seemed to have like accepted the 2-0 scoreline. And it was one of those weird games where I felt like, okay, Arsenal were like, okay, we're not going to try more if you don't try more. And for us, we're like, okay, we'll take 2-0. Let's just play this game out. And for, which isn't the right way we should approach this. I mean, I'm not saying that's right, but that's what it kind of seemed like. Kind of seemed like a bit of a preseason game where we're playing a team much worse than us, and they're like, okay, we're done. We'll see you when like things get serious in the league. And yeah, we really didn't have any intensity. We didn't have any energy. The players were passing it around. There's some stupid, silly passes from Odegaard at one point where I'm just like, why are you playing that? It's just unnecessary. Like, you don't need to play that pass. It was a pass that you play when you're 2-0 up and you're just a bit overly confident. And it didn't really work out. I thought just generally it was a bit casual. And I mean, the other thing is obviously Yuri and Timber came off, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit, but that meant that Tomiyasu just wasn't as dynamic and as technical as what Timber was doing, which obviously didn't help. But I think we kind of just thought, actually, at 2-0, that's okay. And then, I remember then, obviously, we had a corner, or at least a decent chance up our end, and we lost the ball. And then I think it was Elanga just started running. And they obviously brought Elanga on, and I can't remember the other guy's name who scored. But
I won you.
Yeah, he came on, and obviously they were very fresh, and they weren't part of this agreement that the two teams have had in the second half of like, okay, let's just play this out. They were like, we're gonna run, we're fresh, like this is our Premier League debut for this, like it was our the first few minutes of this season. They're gonna run, and then they just ran, and it was sloppy. We didn't foul Elanga, we didn't foul Elneny when we could have done. And yeah, they scored. It was silly. I think some would probably argue that Ramsdale should have done a bit better on the goal. I'm not really sure about that. I thought it was a tricky one, but we should have dealt with the goal. Put it that way. And yeah, then I don't know. What do you think? Is there more to it than that? Or is there some science, or Russ says
No, I think
Timber injury rattled us. Yeah, the Timber injury definitely was a factor, but Tomiyasu is not a bad player, right? He should come in, and he's good enough to play at that level. Yes, he's not going to invert and do things, but the team should adapt.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's an argument say that because Timber's injury looked potentially serious, it may have rattled the team a little bit, thinking, oh God, it's only game one and we've lost a really talented player that we've just signed. I don't know. But I don't think, you're right, from a technical standpoint, Tomiyasu came on and think he was fine. I didn't see an issue with that. I didn't think that, it meant that we had to do too much different given the opposition. But and I completely agree. It was the freshness, because Elanga's quite a good player anyway. I always liked Elanga from Man United anyway. And he's quick. And I think we just sort of got done. I think what's really disappointing, though, if you look at it overall, is that, I mean, I think they had 2 attempts, Nottingham Forest, on goal anyway, right? I think they had 2 shots on goal, 2 shots on target rather, and one of them's got in. Now that's just not good enough from an Arsenal perspective to think that, to end up winning a game 2-1, having 80% possession in the end. I think we're still 80% possession that we had. It doesn't mean anything. It means totally nothing. If you're going to say that, out of the 2 shots your opponent get on goal, they're going to score one of them, it means nothing. And I think that we've got, luckily, I think our team is now more experienced, and the players that we've added are more experienced. And I think that they will kind of see it as a good wake-up call. And I don't think they're going to be incredibly naive going forward. In fact, I think that it's just, I'm happy to put this one down to just opening day, not necessarily kind of being at 100% pace, and just, perhaps being a little bit unconsciously easy. Let me say, I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but that, let's talk about the Timber injury a little bit, because he obviously was such a top player for us in the Community Shield. It wasn't therefore a surprise to see him retain his place. When he went down initially. It was before halftime, I think, that he went down, right? Initially. And that didn't look great when he went down. And then halftime came, he came back out, and very soon into the second half, he wasn't, it wasn't a contact injury. So no, it was just, he basically just randomly seemed to go down. And then slow motion, it looks like his knee does something kind of a bit funny. But when he was getting seen by the physios, immediately the guy was, my friend Jeff, who was sitting with us, Jeff's done his ACL before. His dad, I think, is also an orthopedic surgeon. And he immediately said, they're testing for his ACL. Immediately he said, like, that's an ACL test they're doing. So I'm a bit worried because Arsenal still haven't announced what the deal is, which I feel like can only mean they're doing significant tests to figure out how serious this is. Otherwise, put it this way: if it was nothing, I can't imagine they haven't leaked something, or he hasn't. He seems to be quite active on Instagram and Twitter or whatever. I'm surprised he wouldn't have said anything. Do you have a concern, Aaron? And I mean, do you think that is this something, in a way, you've seen a lot of these teams get early injuries. Are we due an early injury, and are you kind of willing to accept it?
Well, am I willing to accept it? No. I mean, would I rather he was there? Obviously. That injury, it looked bad. I think from my side, just describing the moment, right? He was off the ball. The ball kind of was played to him pretty early on, and he just almost went down out of nowhere. And he went down in a way that looked like he twisted something, or looked like he kind of felt a bit of a struggle. And then, yeah, he was off. I mean, look, the only bit that kind of makes me feel a little bit reassured is if he had done his ACL or done something significant in that first bit of contact, then I think the club had all of half time to check it. So if the club did have any issues with it, they would have probably seen something that significant during the 15 minutes that they probably would have got him on the physio's table and got him out there. So yeah, I think I'm hoping that it's not bad, but the way he went down is certainly a concern and certainly an issue. So I'm hoping that he's going to be okay. Fingers crossed, and we will see how that one goes. Now,
me too. I mean, I think everyone's going to be very eagerly watching what comes out on social media, because he has just looked like a real talented player, hasn't he? So let's hope for the best on that. Now, fine. It is what it is. It wasn't great, and it's not nice being at the end of a home game 2-1 against Forest, and you're the team that's trying to run it into the corners, and you're the team that's trying to kill time. That wasn't nice at all for me. But at the end of the day, a win's a win, right? We've gone away and we've got the 3 points, and that's how you want to start the season. The other results this weekend have so far been I don't think there's been anything crazy aside from Newcastle absolutely battering Villa, which I was a bit surprised about because Villa have seemingly kind of turned into quite a decent side, but clearly they took an absolute hammering. I think 5-1 it was. But aside from that, you had Man City really dispatching Burnley on opening day away from home. You had today a couple of interesting results with kind of Brentford and Spurs, and Brentford drawing 2-2 with Spurs, and Chelsea and Liverpool drawing 1-1. Aaron, have you learned anything from what you've seen so far? Anything surprised you?
I think there are nothing major, no major surprises. I think the results have sort of gone the way I expected them to. I think for one game, look, there's not much you can say that. I was impressed by Newcastle, but I thought Villa were doing okay, and then Emery kind of just made some weird substitutions, and then they seemed to just lose their shape and structure and started conceding a lot of goals. I'm not as hot on Villa as everyone else seems to be. I think what Villa will do is Villa will get points against big teams because Emery likes to see like in big games to push teams and like step up a lot. But in other games, I think Emery will just do dumb things and he'll struggle to dominate teams that he should be beating. So yeah, I think I'm not as excited on Villa. Apart from that, I think I'm intrigued to see how Man United look. Spurs, I thought were okay, but it's hard to work out. Like, is this just preseason, early season rustiness, or is this team actually not good? And one signing or two signings can easily make a huge difference.
Yeah, agreed. But I like the fact that you aren't sold on Villa completely, because I found them quite an unlikable team over the years. And I don't know why that is. They've kind of just made their way up onto the list of teams I don't really like that much. And I like Unai. I want Unai to do well, but I don't particularly want Villa to do well. And I think it's interesting though, because clearly the squad that they're trying to assemble is half decent. They're making the odd good signing. And so clearly they have a decent amount of ambition. I'd love to know how far that ambition runs, though. I'd love to understand from a Villa perspective whether they think that they genuinely can be, we don't call it top four anymore. We're probably going to have to call it top five. But even if it's top five, I don't really know how realistic that is given the amount of competition out there. Let's talk very briefly Brentford Tottenham. I don't know if you managed to see any of the game. I did see bits, and it looked like Tottenham did some decent stuff every now and again through James Maddison. Overall, like, I think they looked okay going forward, but there were a couple of times, mate, where I was like, Harry Kane would have finished that.
Yeah. I thought Brentford were pretty decent. It's one of those where that game was just a bit weird. I couldn't tell certainly like what Spurs were trying to do. They didn't do much, but then Brentford at times were really sloppy, and then they let Spurs back into it twice. Well, sorry, Spurs went up in front, I think, at the start, and then obviously Brentford went 2-1 up. But there were definitely periods in that game where I just felt Brentford should have just absolutely killed them off, and they didn't. And yeah, Brentford were the better team, but not good enough to win it, I think. And I think if you're I struggle to say a Spurs manager's name, Postelegu, is that how you say it? You'll be pretty pleased with a point away at Brentford, I think, because it is a hard place to come to. Not many teams actually managed to win there last season. We were one of a very few number of teams that did actually win there. But yeah, I think it was one of those where we like Spurs. I don't know, man. I don't know. My heart and my head tells me Spurs will struggle this year, but they could just become like they could be whatever everyone thinks Villa are going to be this season, and just be well coached, well organized, 2 or 3 really good players. I think Son has looked awful in that game. If he comes good, I think that's a big one, right? But if he really has just completely fallen off a cliff and hit that age cliff where his levels just drop, then I think they'll struggle, because Richarlison on his own, I don't think will do enough.
Yeah, I agree. There's moments where I'm looking at Tottenham going, well, I can see them doing okay, but okay. When I say okay, I there's not a bit of me that thinks that they'll be in the top 5. So for me, it's just more of a case of I would say doing okay is 6th. If they finish 6th, I'd be like, okay, well done, actually. Like, that's probably.
So do you think having seen the opening games,
yeah,
has your top 5 prediction changed?
No, it hasn't. Obviously, I haven't seen Man United yet, but it hasn't, because I think I had Liverpool and Chelsea in my top 5, and today I thought they both have reasons to think that they'll probably be okay this season. I did when I watched the Chelsea Liverpool game today, I did think that if Arsenal were to play either of those teams right now, like literally if they played today, I think Arsenal would win. I would have really looked forward to seeing Arsenal play against them, given how their defenses look today, because I think they've still got a lot of things that both sides need to sort out. But I think there's still some good stuff there. So I haven't changed my mind. We're gonna have to give it some games though at the end of the day, right? And there's still going to be some transfers left to be made. So let's see. What about you? Do you think that there's anything that's made you change your mind?
No, I think Newcastle obviously look very good. I didn't predict them to. I think I predicted them to struggle because of the depth of their squad. Their squad depth might get challenged over the course of the season. I think actually that's probably a theme that I like echo for a number of teams, actually including Man City now, which is I think we're at a point now where we probably have, if not the deepest squad in the league, one of the deepest squads in the league in terms of how deep that quality goes. Where we've got, I've talked about this before, but good quality backups who you wouldn't mind saying if, this player was out for 3, 4, 5 games, we would make it work. Now, obviously, if multiple of those players were out and we had backups, we had 3, 4, 5 of those, let's say, backups playing, the overall quality of the first 11 does drop, right? But, you saw it with City. De Bruyne is potentially out for a while with that kind of hamstring injury that he's been struggling with for a while. I think, if City don't sign anyone else, having lost Gundogan, having lost Mahrez, that takes a lot out. I know they're playing different positions, but that puts a lot of dependency on some of their squad players who might not be up to the challenge. It's still City; they could still bring about multiple good players, but actually, then you go down that squad. Some of these first 11s have obvious holes in them, but I think Liverpool, they need a defensive midfielder. Chelsea probably need a defensive midfielder and probably an attacking midfielder as well. And actually, you take 1, 2 of those players out of that first 11, the Chelsea first, the Liverpool first 11, the Man United first 11, the Spurs first 11, the replacements that come in are potentially several levels below. And that might be the advantage that we have, that we really need to make work. What the issue I worry about is, like, if some of these replacements come in, if Smith Rowe comes in, if Vieira comes in, if Trossard comes in, Kiwior comes in, David Raya comes in, hopefully, are they going to be match ready? Are they going to be familiar with the systems? Because they're individually very, very good players, right? They would walk into most first 11s in the Premier League. So we just need to make sure they're ready to go as soon as they're called upon. And that probably means starting them in games where you wouldn't necessarily expect them to start.
Yeah, agreed. On that basis, I wonder what we're going to do against Crystal Palace, mate, coming up. So the next round of fixtures are interesting because I think in the league table, out of the teams that won so far this weekend, obviously Man United and Wolves haven't played yet. I think 6 teams won, I want to say. Does that make sense? That makes logical sense. And 4 of those teams are playing each other. So it's a real big 6 battle this weekend. And so Arsenal, Palace are 2 of those teams. Palace won. Palace is good against Sheffield United. I know it's Sheffield United and, we haven't really got a good sense of where Sheffield United, are exactly in terms of how good they are. It doesn't look great for Sheffield United on the face of it because, I still don't understand why they would have sold Sander Berge to Burnley. That makes 0 sense to be promoted and then sell your best central midfielder to another team that got promoted. I just don't get it. Anyway. But point is, I don't really know what Sheffield United's tactic is this season. Do they genuinely want to stay up this season, or are they thinking that they need a season to just kind of, get the Premier League money, go back down, and then kind of make another kind of effort, as we've seen the likes of Norwich and Fulham do in the past? But Palace did win, and Palace looked good, from the highlights. So again, all I saw was match of the day, but they did look better than I thought Palace would look. What are your thoughts looking towards the game? We've got a slightly longer break than kind of, the other teams. Well, I guess, probably the same as Palace, because Palace also played Saturday, but we've played Saturday and we're not going to be playing until Monday. So there's a good recuperation time. It's a good time for Arteta to think things through, prepare the team. What do you think? What do you think we've got in store next Monday?
Yeah, I think the fact that we went there early on last season and won, well, the opening day of last season, because I think you and I were there, Raj, right? the ability to do that has made the prospect of because I think that was a Friday night game. This is going to be a Monday night game. The prospect of that just a little bit less daunting. But also the fact that we've also gone there before and lost means that we won't be complacent at all.
Yeah.
So I would hope, and I do expect that we would prepare very, very well. I'd expect that we would, be ready, be fit. I'd hope there's positive news on forgotten his name now, Timber. And hopefully would have David Raya over the line by then. I've heard he's due back in training. He's due to actually train tomorrow. So
Oh well, okay.
At some point, I'm gonna hope that this guy that's going to turn up to training is going to be announced as our player. Otherwise, it's going to be like, what's his name? Robert Pires, who just kept rocking up to training for 5 years after retiring. And everyone was like, why is he still here? But I think, look, I think it'll be a good game because, like you said, Raj, Palace won't necessarily play a low block, right? Playing at home, they're going to be incentivized to just try and push us a bit more. I don't know how well they'll press us, so it might mean that we have the ability to try and just kind of break through their lines a bit. I think, like you said, this is a good game for players like Nketiah, for Havertz, for Martinelli, and I'm kind of hoping that it'll be a comfortable-ish win.
I'm hopeful too. That sounds silly. I would rather actually they didn't have had such a kind of easy game against Sheffield United because it probably built a little bit of confidence. I think going away to Palace on opening day would have probably been quite a good fixture for us again, to be honest. I fully expect us to go there and win. I fully expect us to go there and put a very kind of dominant performance as well, because I think that one of the things when I was watching us play, and partly this was because you've got Declan Rice maybe, and he's the one probably who stood out. But I did look on the pitch various times and think, bloody hell, there were a lot of good players on this pitch. And I thought that a little bit last season, but I thought even more, against Forest when you had Timber and Rice. But even Havertz, who fine, he might be kind of divisive, but he's still a Champions League winner. He's still kind of a player with a lot of pedigree. So I feel there's so much, and look, I just want to see the team do well next Monday, and I have every faith that they will. I am intrigued as to what we do with the lineup. I think going to kind of Russ's point here. Russ is just saying about how he was surprised with the Gabriel omission, and saying, I hope it was just an experiment as he's played something like 70 games straight. I mean, Russ, I think everyone was surprised. My fantasy football team was very surprised and very upset that Gabriel didn't play. But you're right. He like Aaron had pointed out at the beginning of this podcast, he was the last person that you thought wouldn't play in every combination of team that you may have written down on paper. But I think he'll play it anyway. I think he'll play against Palace, and I think he would have played irrespective of whether Timber got injured. I firmly think that we would just go to Palace and go with a normal kind of back four out of possession, if you like, if that's what the best way you want to call our system. And so, I can see Gabriel and Saliba being reinstated as a back two, as a centre back combination. But look, I'm really looking forward to that game. And fortunately, I am going to the game with Mize. So that maybe I'll see Aaron Ramsdale's dad again.
Oh yeah,
I'll give him your love.
We had a drink with Aaron Ramsdale's dad last time, didn't we?
Yeah. I'll give him your love, mate.
He was a nice guy. So, do you want to hear some news about Chelsea?
Well, there you go. I was just going to say, before we wrapped up, I also did what you did. And I was like, well, I wonder if, like, in true Arsaholics podcast fashion, David Ornstein has tweeted whilst we've been recording, because he normally does. He normally finds out when the Arsaholics are recording, and then
do you think he's just sitting on the sofa watching us and being like, I'm just going to wait so they can talk about what transfer.
That is all he does. Do you want to read out what it says?
All right. So the ongoing, in my opinion, kind of tiring transfer saga of not just the last window, but the last three windows of Moises Caicedo. Well, some may debate how you say that, but I say this, Caicedo. Chelsea have struck an agreement with Brighton to sign Caicedo, a British record 115 million fee and a sell-on clause to Brighton. Contract 8 years with the option of a ninth. Medical book for tomorrow. Transfer expected to be completed same day. Oof, Raj, what do you make of that?
That's absolutely insane. Like, so look, firstly, I think that I still, even though I think that I'm fairly with the times, I still am bulking at, you know, a lot of these big transfer fees, but I've come to accept that that's just the way it is. And I think with Declan Rice, I was just accepting that that's just the way it is. With Jude Bellingham, you know, I could kind of accept that's the way it is. With the thing is with Caicedo, the thing that I struggle with him with, it still feels to me that he's sort of a bit flavor of the monthy. And I thought this even when we, by the way, you know, when we bid 80 million for him, I was like, what the hell? Like, since when? Like, I had no idea he was regarded as one of the best players in the Premier League. Because, you know, I mean, if someone's bidding 80 million for you, you're probably one of the best players in the Premier League, to be honest, right? So when we bid that much in January, I was like, geez. But the fact that you've got two absolute, you know, Premier League heavyweights in Chelsea and Liverpool vying to see who can make him the most expensive Premier League player of all time. I mean, that's incredible. 115 million, as you say, plus the sell on. And look, for him, I mean, you remember when we bid for him and he kind of did this whole, he put that public statement out to ask Brighton to let him leave. And in his write-up, I think, you know, he sort of mentioned about how this contract would, you know, change the lives of his family and, you know, all this kind of stuff. He talked about, you know, all that, how he's basically come from nothing. You know, I'm not, you know, he turned down Liverpool allegedly, right? Like he said he didn't want to go to Liverpool and wanted to go to Chelsea. I wonder how much of it is because Chelsea are offering out contracts like this, 8 years with a potential ninth.
Yeah.
He basically can go, whatever happens, he is sorted for the rest of his life, right?
Yeah,
He could
probably
retire at the end.
Probably put him on at least 200k a week, right? You'd guess,
Yeah.
but someone like that, they'd probably make him the top earner at the club, because, you know, not because it's logical, but because that's how Todd Bowley just thinks. Like, player asks for money, he'll just give it to him. So 250k a week, even 300k a week wouldn't surprise me.
I doubt he'll be on that. I actually don't think he'll be on that much.
You think?
I think I think that even though it is a massive you know, transfer fee, I wouldn't be surprised if it is something. I imagine it'll be a lot. I still imagine it'll be like about 150k or something. But I imagine it will be 150k or something with, you know, every year goes up by this amount of, you know, this percent, like that. Yeah. That anyway, that's by the by.
Yeah. All right. Fine. Well, I mean, I don't know. Player wages are so hard to like really get accurate information on. It's going to be a guess either way. But he'll be on a decent amount. And like you say, 8-year contract. So 8 years with an option of another one. Is that right?
Yeah.
8, which is insane. Like, I thought, I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that FIFA were making this stuff illegal.
Yeah, I know. I thought that's right. Yeah, what happened with
that? It allows them to basically, you know, amortize the fee for 8 years over 9 years. 9 years, 110 million is actually not that much, like 15, 20 million a year is doable, right? But that, and then I'm, as far as I know, I'm aware, FIFA just jumped in and were like, no, this is like, you can't do this anymore. This is like making a mockery of the already made a mockery of rules, which is financial fair play, which Chelsea have completely just like shat on, basically. I think I read somewhere they spent like 900 million pounds in the last 2 windows or something, like 303 windows or something, which is ridiculous. Look, I think he's a really good player. I think every time I've seen him play, he's been really good. I think, you know, when he was linked with us, I did a lot of research on him, and I remember people saying that actually Brighton did really, really well to get him, because when he was in South American football, he was regarded as like one of the talents of his age group. And the fact that he went to Brighton was a huge coup for him. And it, you know, I don't want to judge too harshly, but he does seem like the typical South American badly advised wonder kid who doesn't really know doesn't really have any club loyalty, but doesn't really care, like doesn't really think in terms of football terms where he wants, right? And I think, like you said, a 9-year contract is definitely one where he thinks, "I'll sod the football," because I think whichever way you look at it, if you're a young player, Liverpool for me is 10 times a better destination than Chelsea. A Liverpool who will make you the undisputed, king of their midfield for the next 4 or 5 years under a manager who is tactically brilliant, motivationally brilliant. The fans out there will love you forever. Why would you not go to Liverpool? Instead, you go to Chelsea, you'll sign 1 million players. You have no idea who their manager is going to be in a year because they may get bored with Pochettino. You have an owner who's completely reckless who, like they signed Fernandes and now they're signing Caicedo. What's to say that in another year's time they go and bid 100 million for Jude Bellingham or something like that, and because they think they can get him. So I don't get it, but fair play to Chelsea for getting it done.
And bless you. So you just need good way to end your point. Yeah, no, I agree. Respect. I've in the sense that they clearly wanted a player in that position. Them and Liverpool both desperately wanted one, and they've ended up getting the one that they wanted. I'm really confused at the FFP angle from the perspective that I thought that long contract thing was being banned. I remember at the time thinking, I don't know how they banned that. I'm not really sure how that works. Unless you basically change what I thought was be more realistic is you change the FFP rules and you basically say, okay, like you can only kind of, spread out the cost of the transfer over, I don't know, a maximum of 5 years or something. Do you know what I mean? Something like that. So your contract can be longer, but you can't spread it over like an 8-10 year thing. I don't know how that would work. But the fact of the matter is you still need cash to do all this. And they are relying, I suppose, on. I imagine a lot of these deals aren't a case where they're paying 115 million to Brighton straight away. They are probably paying this in, various installments over a period of time, and that's still cash. And I imagine that they've got a lot of deals which are structured in a similar way, where there's therefore a lot of cash that's going on an annual basis. The Chelsea model, for me, FFP aside, ignore FFP for a second. But it is very, very contingent on them being a Champions League side, right? And it is very, very dependent on that money coming in. So I am very interested to see. I mean, to see how that pans out. I think if they, at the end of the day, if they can propel themselves in the top 5 and carry on doing that, then I'm sure they can make the maths work. Otherwise, the worst case scenario is you get into a situation where for a couple of years you just really struggle to meet those cash payments, those pure cash payments, right? Like this is going back into a accounting kind of situation where it doesn't really matter. You could actually look really profitable. Your business itself could look really good from a P&L perspective, but from a cash perspective, you can still go bankrupt. Yeah, do you know what I mean? So it's very possible. But anyway,
I just got to say, I just scrolling through David Ornstein's Twitter feed, and on the 18th of July, he reported that Chelsea bid 60 million for Moises Caicedo. So the space of a month, or just under a month, the fee has gone from Chelsea bidding 60 million to getting 115 million accepted. So I know a lot of Brighton fans have said that actually they can lose McAllister, for example, but losing Caicedo is a real big blow to them. But they've walked away with almost 150, 160 million quid for those two players. So they are very, very good at getting value for their players. It's a miracle that we managed to give them 30 million for Leo Trossard, to be fair. Because I think if they came asking now, probably be worth about double that. So no,
incredible.
I don't know. I think Chelsea's financially are doing some very, very shady things that I think will probably come out in a while. But as with all of these shady things, you can keep doing them until you get caught. And even when you get caught, it takes Premier League and lawyers and everyone years to argue over if it's even bad. and by
It's
then it's too
very
late.
hard.
Yeah,
It's very hard, all this, isn't it? It's just messy. No one's held to account. I'm not saying Chelsea have done anything wrong per se, but the point is, if they have done something wrong, I don't have any faith in anything happening of any material nature. It's just the faith in the faith in justice with regards to stuff like this is just a bit, it's just waning.
Do you feel a bit sorry for Liverpool?
No, I don't, because it doesn't sound like they were actively trying to negotiate for him. It sounded like they were, they kind of just not came out of nowhere, but a little bit came out of nowhere when Chelsea kind of had agreed on a price. They knew what price they knew what would be accepted. Liverpool went and jumped in. I find that odd, because Liverpool, I don't imagine, are in the business of just kind of saying, yeah, whatever the price is, we'll pay it. They needed someone in this position. They need someone in this position. Like, they openly need someone in this position. And they've kind of, it sounds like they just didn't do any of the groundwork with the player. It sounds like they just didn't do when you're doing a transfer for that size, you don't drop 110 million on a player and not do the groundwork. Like, what the hell is that about? That sounds like really weird. Like, you surely would know he'd come to you. Like that, for me, it feels
That is a bit of a weird one, but maybe it's just the fact that, like you said, Raj, they were offering him a 4-year contract, and Chelsea were offering him 8+1, and
it is. And to be honest, I say this
as simple as that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I totally agree, and I think that you look at what happened with Mudryk, and we did all the groundwork. He was twerking for us. And ultimately, Chelsea came in, paid the money, and he was like, okay. So perhaps Liverpool thought in exactly the same way. Chelsea may have done the groundwork, but if they're not willing to pay the money and we are, then they'll come to us. I guess probably they just didn't think that, maybe they just thought Chelsea might not also go up to that amount. But it's crazy. I mean, let's see. Because the other thing is, it sounds like Lavia is going to go Chelsea as well.
Is he?
Everyone's reporting that it's closer to Chelsea than he is Liverpool.
I don't know. I think Chelsea they're doing some bad things in football. And I don't know. It's just when I think about this nonsense, it just annoys me. So I'm not going to think about Chelsea. But like, you look at their first 11 today, and I don't think it was that good. Like you said, we've not spent, right? We've spent money, but our first 11 seems considerably better than theirs for probably half as much money.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, in fairness to Chelsea, they have sold a lot. I think over the last year, I think they've, right? I think they showed it today on Sky. I think they've managed to recoup something like, I was like 240 million or something like this over the last year. Yeah. It's a lot, because if you think about
Havertz, sold us, Mount, yeah.
Then you have like the folk, like a few folks who obviously went over to the Middle East. So you've got, all that crowd. Who's it got? Mendy, and I think Kante went on a free. But there are a couple of others that I'm forgetting. And then obviously the crowd went to Italy recently. So Pulisic and Ruben Loftus-Cheek. So like, it all adds up. It seems to add up, and I think they've done okay in recouping money. Maybe it's not as high as I said it was, but they don't end up like prior to Caicedo. They didn't end up with a huge net spend overall this year. But now, like with Caicedo, it's big, and with Lavia it'll be big. So geez, look, man, I don't know. Like you say, it's probably not worth thinking about, because clearly if they're doing all this, clearly they've got a plan. Clearly they think that they can stay within the rules. So it is what it is. But look, cool. It was really fun chatting, mate. And we will probably not record until after Crystal Palace. So everyone, I hope you enjoyed the start of the season. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Again, please like, subscribe, and share. We really do appreciate it. And enjoy the rest of your week with Arsenal being joint top of the league. See you guys.
See you later. Bye-bye.